The air in our apartment hummed with a stranger's presence. A man's voice, a low, casual rumble, confident and utterly alien to our space. Even worse, the sound of her laughter, light and unburdened, floated from my wife's study. I stood in the corridor, a basket of freshly laundered towels suddenly feeling impossibly heavy, frozen mid-stride because Kiana had left the door ajar. Or perhaps she hadn't. Perhaps she wanted me to catch just a whisper, just enough to piece together the picture. They weren't engaged in anything physical, not yet. But that wasn't the sting. The real betrayal was the sheer, unadulterated happiness in her voice. A lightness I hadn't heard in months, maybe even years, directed at someone else. My hand didn't fly to the doorknob. No shout tore from my throat. I simply retreated, gently setting the laundry basket down on the plush runner, and quietly exited our apartment. I found my car parked a few blocks away near an empty lot, sliding into the driver's seat, the engine silent. For 40 minutes, I simply stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I felt no rage, no shock, just a profound, aching hollowness. What if the person you built your life with was a ghost you never truly knew? Her name is Kiana. Not Kia, not Anna. Kiana. She insists on the full, elegant pronunciation, claiming it sounds expensive. She's always gravitated towards anything that felt refined, exclusive. I suppose I never truly grasped how utterly cheap I must have seemed in comparison. When I finally drove back, walking through the front door as if nothing had transpired, I found her alone in the sleek, minimalist kitchen, brewing a cup of herbal tea. No trace of him. Her auburn hair, usually meticulously styled, was pulled back in a loose bun, her face bare of makeup, an unsettling calm about her. "You left a few shirts in the dryer," I offered, my voice steady. She glanced at me, a flicker of surprise in her emerald eyes, then nodded, a quiet "thanks" slipping out. It was the following evening when the bomb finally dropped. She sat on the edge of the velvet armchair, her gaze fixed on mine. "I went on a date last night. Not an apology, not a confession, merely a statement, delivered with the practiced ease of someone reading a grocery list. When I offered no reaction, she continued, I just needed to feel like someone truly saw me again." "Truly saw you?" I echoed, my voice flat. "Who was he?" She gave a dismissive shrug. "Does it matter?" Then came the phrase that truly cleaved me in two. "It wasn't meant to be a big deal. I thought you'd understand. You always do." And she was right. I always did understand. I always strove for calm, for patience, for fairness. But in that precise moment, something irrevocably shifted. A permanent fracture. I could feel it settle deep within my bones. I said nothing. I walked into our bedroom, opened the top drawer of her nightstand, and retrieved the spare key to her old studio apartment, the one she thought I knew nothing about. I dropped it into her half-empty tea mug. The delicate clinking sound as it settled at the bottom was the only sound. She simply stared, her expression unreadable. I turned and left the room. She didn't follow, and I had no inkling that my tiny, quiet gesture would ultimately unravel her more profoundly than she could ever anticipate. She didn't question why I dropped the key into her tea. She just stared at the mug as if it contained a potent venom, something that would burn her fingers if she dared touch it. Perhaps it did. I couldn't say. I didn't wait for her response. I simply walked into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind me, and lay flat on my back, watching the ceiling fan churn in slow, silent circles. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't trembling. That terrified me more than anything. I was too calm, too profoundly numb. Kiana didn't come to bed that night. I heard her hushed voice from the living room, low and indistinct on the phone. It wasn't her mother or her sister. Kiana never whispered with family. It had to be him, Caleb, or whatever name she'd given him. In that moment, he could have been anyone, and that made it infinitely worse. She was emotionally present for someone else, not me, and she no longer even bothered to feign the pretense. The next morning, she prepared breakfast as if the previous night were a forgotten dream. Oatmeal, sliced bananas, a sprinkle of cinnamon, my comfort meal. I didn't touch it, merely sipped my coffee, my gaze fixed on her left hand. The slender silver band I'd given her 8 years ago, on our anniversary, still adorned her finger. She caught my glance and swiftly pulled the sleeve of her silk robe over it, as if the ring had become a sudden, embarrassing stain. Around noon, a text arrived from her while I was in the garage. "Can we talk tonight?" I didn't reply. Not to play a game, but because any words I managed would only sound pathetic. Instead, I began rearranging my vinyl collection, alphabetizing by artist. A mindless, trivial task to occupy my hands and distract my mind from the slow, agonizing collapse of my marriage. But that evening, something shifted. I was scrolling through our shared cloud storage, searching for an old car insurance scan, when I stumbled upon a folder labeled Finances 2023. Amidst mundane spreadsheets and archived invoices, a single video file stood out. No title, just a timestamp. 7 minutes, 32 seconds. Here's what no one tells you about hidden files. They always have a story to tell. I don't know what compelled me to open it. Perhaps a part of me already knew what I would find. Perhaps some twisted corner of my psyche desperately craved proof. The video opened on her, laughing, a wine glass in her hand, on a couch I'd never seen before, wearing that emerald dress she swore she donated last spring. She wasn't looking at the camera. Her gaze was fixed on someone off-screen. A man, his voice hauntingly familiar, the very one I'd heard through the half-open study door. At the 3-minute mark, he leaned into the frame, a smirk playing on his lips, to kiss her neck. She giggled, a whisper escaping her lips. "He still has no clue." I paused the video. My breath hitched, caught in my throat. That voice, that smug expression, that damning line. He still has no clue. Now I did. She walked into the living area 10 minutes later, perhaps sensing the shift in the air, the sudden chill. Her eyes darted to my laptop, freezing on the still frame of her own smiling face. She stopped dead. I didn't yell. I didn't even look at her. "I hope he likes oatmeal too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That was the last sentence I spoke to her for the next 2 days. The silence that descended upon our apartment was unbearable. Not the peaceful quiet of shared intimacy, but a deafening clang, a warning bell that never ceased. For 2 days she moved like a ghost. Quiet, careful, constantly watching me from the periphery of rooms, as if a loud word might shatter my composure. I didn't give her an opening to explain. I didn't want an explanation. What could she possibly say? That it was a phase? That the man in the video was a momentary lapse? That the laughter wasn't real? No. You don't accidentally record yourself calling your husband clueless while draped across another man's lap in a house you swore you hated driving past. On the third night, she tapped gently on the bedroom door. Just once. No follow-up knock. No pleading. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as if it held all the answers. When her footsteps receded, I finally allowed myself a shaky breath. I felt pathetic for it. I should have thrown her out or packed my own bags, but I couldn't. I refused to be the one to abandon the home I'd built, the life I'd meticulously crafted, even if she had already set fire to half of it without a second thought. After that, I started noticing everything differently. The way she'd clean the kitchen but always leave her wine glass on the counter, a silent signature. The way she still wore perfume for errands, yet never touched the bottle I'd given her for our anniversary. She was physically present, maintaining the pretense, but her spirit had already moved on. She was just waiting. For what? I couldn't fathom. Then came the call from her sister Mira. We weren't close, but Mira had always been polite, perhaps a little too perceptive. She asked how I was. I lied. Fine. A pause, then a soft murmur. Kiana's been different. Caleb isn't who she thinks he is. My blood ran cold. Who? I asked, feigning ignorance. Mira quickly backtracked. Forget I said anything. Just take care of yourself, Elias. Then she hung up. My hand still trembled as I reopened my laptop. I rewatched the video. Every second, every laugh, every angle. This wasn't self-torture. This was a study. I scrutinized her body language, the precise tilt of her head, the way her fingers brushed his wrist instead of his hand. It wasn't love. It wasn't even infatuation. It was strategy. She was leveraging him for something, but the what remained elusive. Not yet. I closed the screen and looked out the window. She was in her car, parked in the driveway, texting furiously. The cold blue glow of her phone illuminated her face like a spotlight in the gathering dusk. She didn't see me watching, and for the first time in 12 years, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. Not because she had changed, but because she had finally allowed me to see who she truly was. Whatever she was planning, I had to stay one step ahead. Quietly, patiently, precisely as she never expected I could be. In 7 days, your entire perception can change. The next few days blurred into a fog of rehearsed normalcy. She cooked dinner as if nothing had happened, folded laundry while watching some true crime documentary on the couch. She even suggested a trip to the hardware store, as if we were still planning the garden path we discussed last spring. I didn't respond directly, offering only vague nods and mumbled replies, but inside I was observing everything. Every blink, every subtle shift in tone, every furtive glance at her phone when she thought my attention was elsewhere. She still believed I was stunned, still the same soft, predictable Elias. She had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. It began with her purse. She left it hanging on the back of a kitchen chair one evening while she took a long bath. Longer than usual, complete with soothing music and the faint scent of eucalyptus drifting into the hallway. I knew she wouldn't hear me. I checked. Not to violate her privacy, that bridge had long been burned, but because I needed to stop playing defense. I needed to know the enemy I was facing. Inside, tucked away, was a second phone. An older model, devoid of a case, and locked. That confirmed it. She was living a double life, meticulously disconnected from ours. No shared apps, no synced messages, just shadows and secrets. I returned it precisely as I'd found it. I didn't even attempt to unlock it. I didn't need to. Its mere presence told me everything. The next morning she was chirpy, too chirpy. She mentioned a coffee meeting with an old yoga friend, a laughable claim given she hadn't attended a yoga class in 2 years. I asked for the friend's name, a simple test. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then offered, Brianna. Not even a convincing lie. I let her leave, offering a pleasant smile as she walked out the door, even handing her the iced coffee she'd forgotten on the counter. She pressed a quick kiss to my cheek, a gesture that burned, but this time I followed her. Not directly. I waited 10 minutes, then drove my car down a side street, parking near the corner store directly across from the Gilded Spoon, a trendy spot known for its overpriced salads and wine flights. Through the tinted windshield, I had a clear view of the patio. She was already there, waiting. He arrived 7 minutes later. I recognized him instantly. The same man from the video, the same self-assured gait, the same unearned confidence in his stride. Caleb Davies, a real estate agent, as Mira had hinted. He sat down as if he owned the entire establishment. Kiana leaned in. They kissed. And then she pulled out the second phone. Stop. Read this before moving on. That's when it clicked. This wasn't merely an affair. She was coordinating, plotting. This wasn't about romance, it was about timing. She was constructing something behind my back, and whatever it was, I was going to unearth it first. I didn't exit the car. I didn't snap photos. I didn't create a scene. I simply watched. Then I turned the key in the ignition and drove away, because by the time she returned home, I would have already initiated the first real move. By the time she stepped through the front door that evening, my hands were steady. No stammering, no cracking voice, just calm, deliberate movements. She looked tired, flushed, a hint of wine on her breath, but her smile was perfectly composed. The store was packed, she said, kicking off her heels. I nodded, handing her a glass of water, playing the role of the good, clueless husband she still believed me to be. She didn't notice I'd already accessed her laptop. Earlier, while she was out, I recalled she occasionally forgot to log out of her primary email account, the one linked to our household bills and her work calendar. But it wasn't what was open that mattered. It was what she had meticulously hidden, an encrypted folder disguised within a generic drive labeled 2023 archives. The password wasn't difficult to guess. Our wedding date, followed by the initials of her old college nickname, KC Fox. Inside were documents I shouldn't have seen, financial records that didn't align with our taxes, a rental application for a two-bedroom apartment in a completely different city, a digital copy of a lease agreement already signed by Rur. Not both of us, just Kiana. And the most crushing detail, the move-in date was next month. She was leaving me. Not a possibility, not a distant future. Soon, she had already paid the deposit. It was done. I sat there for 10 full minutes after discovering it, staring at her electronic signature on the lease. My name was nowhere to be found. I was never part of the plan. I was simply the quiet placeholder she intended to slip away from once everything was perfectly aligned. So I made a quiet adjustment. I downloaded the file, subtly altered the move-in date, saved a copy to my own external drive, and replaced hers with a slightly corrupted version. Nothing dramatic, just enough to delay her timeline, to make her believe a glitch had occurred. Just enough to buy myself time. Why failure is the key to success. Sometimes a small glitch can reveal everything. She made pasta for dinner, poured us both wine, and prattled on about the neighbor's cat getting stuck in a tree again. I stirred my noodles, feigning interest, but my eyes were on her left hand once more. The ring was gone. She hadn't even bothered to hide it anymore. "I've been thinking," she said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "Maybe we should take some space. I feel like we've lost our way." I met her gaze directly, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Already ahead of you," I said. She froze, not because of the words themselves, but because of the chilling finality in my tone. She didn't realize her clock had already begun ticking. After that dinner, her demeanor became overtly pleasant, the kind of saccharine sweetness that made my skin crawl. She brought me coffee in bed, not in a loving gesture, but like someone attempting to soothe a volatile animal they weren't sure was fully tamed. Every word felt rehearsed. She lingered near me more often, complimented my shirts, even laughed too heartily at my dry jokes. It was as if she were desperately trying to reset the narrative, to create a pleasant facade before her quiet disappearance. But I didn't push. I leaned into it. I made her believe it was working. I played along because I needed to gauge just how far she was willing to lie to my face, and she went far. By Thursday, she was already suggesting a weekend trip to clear our heads. I agreed immediately, told her it sounded perfect. I even offered to book the quaint cottage. A genuine look of relief washed over her face. That's what truly got to me. The pride she exuded, convinced she had me utterly ensnared in her illusion. What she didn't know was that I had already found her new address. Not just the lease, but the neighborhood, the precise layout of the apartment, even the local utilities account she'd set up under a new email. She was methodical, I'll grant her that, but not as invisible as she believed. Her second phone wasn't encrypted enough to prevent me from extracting metadata from synced files. She had left a digital trail, a series of breadcrumbs for anyone willing to dig. I didn't confront her. Instead, I crafted my own version of the truth and shared it with someone she would never expect, her boss. Kiana had used paid time off to attend a family emergency last week, which was clearly her sushi date. It turned out her company had a stringent personal ethics clause. I emailed them anonymously, attaching only a few carefully selected screenshots that raised questions without revealing the full story. I didn't want to ruin her life. I wanted to slow her down, just enough to witness her reaction when the walls inevitably started closing in. By Friday night, I noticed the subtle shift in her behavior. Her smile was tighter. Her laughter came a beat too late. She constantly checked her phone during dinner, biting her lip when she thought I wasn't looking. The manufactured calm she'd been performing, it was cracking. She was losing control, and I was just getting started. The next morning, she descended the stairs dressed as if for church, though she hadn't stepped foot in one for years. Her eyes were puffy, but she'd applied eyeliner, as if it could mask the heavy weight beneath her lashes. She poured herself a glass of water, not coffee, and stood staring at it, as if sitting might cause her to crumble. I didn't ask if she had slept. We both knew she hadn't. "What do you want me to say?" she finally asked, her gaze fixed on the countertop. I folded the newspaper I hadn't been reading and placed it neatly on the table. "Nothing," I replied. "There's nothing left I need to hear." "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." Her voice cracked, the first genuine break in her composure since this all began. "I wasn't planning to hurt you." "That's the part that makes it worse," I countered. "You weren't planning anything for me, just everything for you." She took a slow sip from her glass, still standing, still avoiding my eyes. "So, what now?" It was a fair question, but my answer was devoid of drama. I didn't slide divorce papers across the table. I didn't tell her to pack her bags or scream about betrayal. I simply pulled a small bank envelope from my back pocket and slid it toward her. She opened it carefully, slower than she had likely opened any love letters from him. Inside was a check made out solely to her name, representing half of our emergency savings account, an account she didn't know I'd moved 2 weeks earlier. She stared at it in silence, her fingers frozen mid-fold. "I don't want the apartment," I said calmly. "I don't want the furniture. You can take the car. You've already taken the rest." She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Her lip trembled, but no tears fell. I stood, grabbed my coat, and walked past her toward the front door. Our terrier mix, Skipper, followed without hesitation. As I opened the door, I uttered one final thing, not to punish, not to hurt, but simply to bring it to a definitive close. "I'm not angry anymore, Kiana. I'm just free." I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't look back. The morning sun bathed my face in a warmth I hadn't felt in months. And I swear I felt something unravel within my chest. Not pride, not triumph, just an immense quiet peace. And sometimes that peace is the most devastating response of all.